Civil society organisation Open Secrets say they're continuing to put pressure on government to bring accountability to allegations of state capture. It's been months since the full report has now been handed over to President Cyril Ramaphosa. Some arms of the state, such as Parliament, are yet to act on the findings of the Commission. Well, in other news, a group of organisations looking at our voting system says they're now rejecting an electoral reform bill which is being proposed by Parliament's Home Affairs Portfolio Committee. They say the entire system is unworkable. The new proposals came after the Constitutional Court ruled that individuals must be allowed to stand for a seat in Parliament and in provincial legislatures. There's been a series of developments over this. A panel that was set up ended up filing two opinions, a majority opinion and a minority opinion. The Home Affairs Department went with the minority opinion. Letlhogonolo Letshele is an electoral systems researcher at My Vote Counts. Letlhogonolo, good afternoon to you. What's wrong with these proposals? Why do you believe they should be rejected?
Good afternoon, Stephen. I couldn't hear your line clearly, so I'm not too sure whether we're referring to the initial problems with the bill or the changes. But fundamentally, what is wrong with the bill is that Parliament completely ignored the majority view of the MEC. When we had the public participation, there was still favour for the majority, which is a change of the system to include independents. But what we're seeing now with the bill is sort of a minority inclusion of independents into the system. So it's really unworkable because there isn't an attempt to really change, so it becomes unworkable. Another thing is that the public participation was really inadequate. It's really an important part of the bill and the process. So there wasn't enough time for people and the public to engage, and there wasn't enough information shared with people so that they could make up their minds with regards to how they understand and how they want independent candidates to be able to contest. Another important point is the bill itself in terms of the content. Of course, I mean, it's not based on any existing system. It's not based on what the majority of people would have favored. So what we're seeing here is sort of antagonistic conditions for independence, because the threshold for signatures for independence is quite high as opposed to political parties. So what we're seeing is that they are required to obtain close to around 30% of the votes from the previous election. So when we run the numbers, it looks like something around 7,000 or more signatures you need for as an independent to be able to contest. And the threshold of seats as well is higher for independents as opposed to political parties. This happens because political parties essentially are able to contest the 400 seats, while independent candidates are only eligible for the House. So really it creates a bit of issue in terms of proportionality and how they would be represented in the National Assembly as well as the provincial legislature.
So what would happen if, as things stand now, if it were implemented? I mean, from what you're saying, it would seem to be very unfair for independent candidates. Basically, it would give the parties more power, is that right?
That's essentially the unintended consequences, if I would put it, because one of the proposals as well on the table is the provinces becoming constituencies. So it's a challenge for an independent to be able to contest, that geographical location where political parties is going to be easy. So those are the issues. It's becoming really unfair and really contradicts the Concord's ruling. Remember, the Concord said we need to find a way, Parliament needs to find a way to include independent candidates in the system, and they need to really contest fairly and equitably, but this is not happening, and this is the challenge with the bill.
Letlhogonolo, I have to confess, I'm quite cynical about the political parties in this. It is not in their interests to allow individuals to contest. Are they doing this deliberately? Come on, you can tell us.
Look, I've heard some commentary around that, because essentially, adding independent candidates kind of changed the balance of power. But I mean, had they went with the majority, I think we wouldn't be sitting in this position, because it's clear we have the system in local government as well, and it's practiced across the world. So that's going to be really easy. We just replicate what we have, and it's just going to be really balanced, where you have constituency-based system on the other side, and you have a PR. So really, if they were trying to do this deliberately, they have themselves to blame, because we're really sitting with an unworkable bill that puts a serious threat to our constitution and the elections that are coming.
So in other words, it would strengthen political parties. Would it actually have an impact on which political parties would be strengthened and which would be weaker? Would it help, say, the bigger parties and not the smaller ones?
It's not really clear at the moment, but with the calculation, for instance, when you have an independent candidate contesting and they get more votes, or for instance they win 2 seats, So we know it's impossible for one person to have 2 seats. So what happens is the surplus votes of the individual goes back to a pool of candidates. So where the candidates would be the political party and the independent candidate. But now the unintended consequence again is that obviously the political party that has a majority will be able to pick up more of the votes because of the majority already. As a political party, they have more. So once you lower the threshold of seats, they can easily pick up on those votes and have an extra seat. So it really happens as a result of the system that they're proposing.
I'm utterly amazed to find that the people who get to be in charge of this process have created a process which would make them stronger, Letlhogonolo. Utterly amazed. When we look at this, what's going to happen if this gets passed? Is the only way to stop this, in your view, what you oppose, is the only way to stop it to go to court?
I mean, we've been trying, and hence our statement is to really get Parliament to engage in warning about what would happen if this bill is passed. Because, I mean, it's a substantially flawed bill for the reasons that I have mentioned. But we are essentially saying that if once this bill is passed and the president really signs it, what we are anticipating is that there would be court challenges, obviously, to contest what we're speaking about, the constitutionality of the bill, the process, and how Parliament really went ahead with the approach that was not favored. So we're really trying to minimize, that constitutional challenge that's going to happen should the Parliament really pass this bill. So we're trying to avoid that, but we're really hoping, Parliament hears our concerns and really reevaluates its position on the bill.
If Parliament does pass it, if there is a court challenge, would that mean there couldn't be electoral reform before the elections in 2024? Are we looking at that possibility?
That's the thing. It's going to get to that possibility where, the Concord would really need to, reconcile with that. Because, I mean, the Electoral Act was suspended. So, according to the Concord judgment, we really cannot have elections under the old system. So it really has to happen with the new one. So, but now the new one is flawed as well and does not really, allow independents to contest as per the Concord ruling. So the judgment, the court would really need to really decide around that and what works. So it will really get to the court would really have to decide on that one and what's best, because now you cannot say let's suspend this bill because it's not working. We'll look at it later, because now it was declared unconstitutional. So once we have the elections come 2024, somebody can wake up the next day and say, this election was unconstitutional because the system was declared unconstitutional in 2020. So if the flawed bill is passed, the Constitutional Court is just going to have a nightmare trying to reconcile these constitutional issues that are just going to be, contesting against each other.
Letlhogonolo Letshele, thank you very much indeed, Electoral Systems Research Officer at My Vote Counts.